Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope all of you are doing well today. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing why it really is a privilege to be able to be a devotee, especially in this day and age. Now this isn't a formal video, this is just me discussing something I just kind of thought about off and on in recent memory. So yeah, I think that a lot of people really take it for granted that they can be a devotee. Now, there are people who are openly devotees. They will wear their Santa Muerte pendants and necklaces out in the open for anybody to see. People who wear Santa Muerte on their t-shirts, people who have Santa Muerte decals on the back of their cars, on their windshields. There are people who walk around with huge Santa Muerte tattoos on their faces, on their necks, on the back of their hands. There are people who are very out and proud about it, right? And we know what that entails. We know that, at least in America, we know that, the police and certain other forces have been educated in things relating to the cartel and kind of tip-offs and signifiers. And we know that Santa Muerte is heavily associated with the cartel through a lot of, publicity and like public service announcements and a lot of propaganda and things like that. She's not the only one. There's also Jesus Malverde that is heavily associated with, those organized crime groups. And so when you are very outspoken about it, it's just something to kind of keep in mind, right? Because you don't want to be penalized or singled out because of your spiritual devotion, right? Now, there are plenty of people, like I live in the US, so there's plenty of people in the US who are devotees, but they don't necessarily brag about it. It's not something they volunteer. It's not information they volunteer to other people. It's not something that they're ashamed of, but it's just something that can be very polarizing and something that can trigger a lot of people. So they know not to bring it up, or for themselves, it's more comfortable for them if they don't let other people know that they're a devotee. There are people who work in government. There are people who work in legal professions who are devotees, and they especially cannot let people around them know that they are devotees. If there are doctors and police officers and firefighters and teachers and nurses and lawyers and other kinds of people who are devotees, it would be smarter for them probably to not draw attention to themselves in that manner. And I think as more time passes, it's becoming slightly more acceptable, at least in the US, because it's become trendy to be spiritual, at least at this time. But if with trends, things rise and flow, things rise and fall. And I think that if it ever becomes to a point where it's no longer so trendy to be spiritual, then a lot more people will kind of be stuck in a troubled place. Now, in the US, it's a huge privilege to be a devotee because you can really kind of do whatever you want, spiritually speaking. As long as you're not harming other people, you can kind of do whatever you want religiously, spiritually. And I think a lot of people who have grown up living in places where it's okay to be spiritual as much as you want, people will get triggered, people will get mad or offended, but at the end of the day, it's not illegal. You can still, worship in your own comfort. But other countries, they don't have that luxury. Just a couple years back in Mexico, the government made La Santa Muerte, or at least the church did, like public enemy number one. But because the church and the government were like very buddy-buddy, it was just kind of like a war on crime, I guess you could say. But through all that happening a couple years ago, there was this huge thing, and many altars to La Santa Muerte were demolished and destroyed. There were all kinds of public shrines to La Santa Muerte that were bulldozed, destroyed, set on fire, crushed, and this was the government doing that. But basically, what I'm really saying is that there are people in other parts of the world, in some parts of the world, who are not able to devote freely, who are not even able to really devote in private either, because if they try to devote in private and they're found out, they could face very serious penalties, they could face imprisonment, and even some places they could potentially be put to death. You know, the whole world isn't caught up, you know, with the US or other parts, other places, even Mexico, where people kind of freely devote to Santa Muerte. There are some parts of the world, some places in South America, some places in Africa, there are other places in the world where things like witchcraft, you know, even certain kinds of spiritual paths and things like that are very much kind of a death sentence or very much looked down on. So, you know, it's just something to remember. Like, the fact that you can go out and devote is a luxury. It's not something that's afforded to everyone. And even in the US, where I live, there are people who live with other people or people who still live with their parents or something like that, and they are forced to not devote openly. They can't have altars, they can't have a lot of things. And so in the end, I think, you know, it's just something to remember, that being able to devote freely or being able to call yourself a devotee at all is really a huge privilege. Being able to follow any spiritual path you want, being able to practice magic if you so choose to, all those kinds of things are something that I think a lot of us take advantage or take for granted rather. And so it was just kind of something I was thinking about how some people might, you know, they might become a devotee, but they don't really realize how much other people have to go through behind the fact that they're a devotee. You know, there are people in Mexico who are being demonized simply because Santa Muerte is associated with the narco trafficking. So basically, I just want to say that if you are, you know, a devotee, then just kind of really just remember to really appreciate the fact that you can do that and that you are a part of that group, because devotees are being kind of persecuted in Mexico. Yes, they can devote, and yes, they do devote openly, some of them, but the government still views, you know, Santa Muerte as being heavily involved with, you know, drug trafficking and crime, organized crime and things like that. They don't refer to her as Santísima Muerte, they refer to her as the skull-faced narco saint, right? And so when it comes to being able to devote, it really is a really big privilege. And I think that it makes me appreciate my practice a lot more when I think about how hard people struggle in other places, to the point where they have to have public protests against the persecution they're facing simply for being a devotee. So that's just something I wanted to kind of talk about. It's something I've kind of been toying with the idea of making a video about for some time, but I just want to keep uploading to this channel, and I keep wanting to just share my thoughts and opinions with all of you. I have a lot more videos I have written down that I'm going to be filming. I probably will film a few right now or when I finish filming this one. So I just want to say, you know, thank you all for watching. I hope you took something away from this video and that it gave you potentially something to kind of think about. I hope it makes you appreciate your spiritual practice with Santa Muerte even more than you already do. And I will see all of you in the next one. Follow me on Instagram if you don't already, because I'm trying to post a lot more on there too. So thank you all, and see you later.